Hello and welcome to the Beyond the Big Six podcast. We are here today to do our predictions for game week 2 of the Premier League season, but also talk about some news because there is a lot happening in the Premier League right now. So we'll talk a little bit about Isak. I promise it will not be a long Isak session because I think everyone's sick of talking about him. We'll also talk a bit about Eze, who looks like he's leaving Crystal Palace, and then we'll get into the predictions. Niall, how are we doing today? Are you looking forward to doing week 2 of our predictions?
I didn't do very well in week 1, so let's hope week 2 I can do a little bit better.
And Tony, how are you feeling? You won last week. You got 9 points. I got 8 points, and Niall got 5 points. So that was the scores. How are you feeling? Confident you'll do well this week?
I'm hoping so. After a flying start, so why not keep it up?
Excellent. So let's talk. We'll talk about Alexander Isak. That's the dominating headline. We're obviously going to talk about this from a Newcastle perspective because we are the Beyond the Big Six podcast, and we don't care about what's happening with Liverpool. So, and how do you feel about what's happening? We had the bombshell statements last night as we record here on a Wednesday. It was Tuesday night. Isak released his and Newcastle released theirs. A lot of almost mudslaying in public, which you don't often see with players. Are both parties guilty, or is Alexander Isak 90% to blame here? How do you see the lay of the land with this whole situation?
So I'm in the camp where I think there's a bit on both sides to blame, in all honesty. Alexander Isak's behaviour is an absolute shambles, if you ask me. You know, to turn around and say that he's not playing for the club ever again and essentially turn his back on all of his, teammates, the manager, the club who's helped to build him into what he is now, one of the world's best. So, yeah, very disheartened from a fan's perspective, to turn his back on the club. From the players' side of things, he's been promised a new deal by the former board from what we're looking inside to see. We don't have any of these deals. It's all kind of very loose, and there's multiple stories coming out from all different angles. We don't know what's the truth, what's like false. There's all sorts going around, and he's been made these promises about a new contract, about the stadium and the training facilities and the players that are coming in, and all of these things haven't really came to fruition. So he's bound to start and ask questions, and he is one of the world's best, so he's going to be looking out and thinking, well, I'm up there with the likes of Haaland, but I'm not getting paid Haaland wages. Why shouldn't I? So I get the frustration from his side. I just don't like the way he's gone about it. I think that's what really sticks in my throat. We've backed him through thick and thin. Through his injuries, and a lot of the clubs didn't go anywhere near him. They didn't take that gamble on him, but we took that gamble. I remember having a conversation with used to prior to him signing, and it was, it's a big risk. You're spending £60 million on a player that had a bit of an iffy season last season, but we took that gamble and we've gotten a player out of him. So there's a lot of trust being put into him. And yes, we're getting a lot out of him, don't get us wrong. But at the same throat, where's that like trust in us to progress? But yeah, I do think there's fault on both sides personally.
And I'll stick with you, Tony. What do you make of Wissa from Brighton, who's behaving in a similar way, refusing to train? It feels like he's really, I've seen that he only wants to move to Newcastle. It's very similar to Isak, who seems to only want to move to Liverpool. It's very unsettling for me as like a football fan that I'm seeing a lot of Newcastle fans who are really obviously very displeased at what's happening with Isak, but are also happy to accept Wissa, who it's not exactly the same, but it's very similar with Wissa. He's looking for a move. He's trying to force his move through, and it feels to me it's a dog eat dog world. That's how football works. And unfortunately for Newcastle right now, Liverpool are, probably top 3 team in Europe right now. They want to sign Alexander Isak. Newcastle are in that echelon below. They're a top maybe 20 club in Europe right now. We'll probably make it through the first couple of stages in the Champions League. That's where Newcastle are. And then Brentford, again, I mean, they're a few rungs down from that. Like, you can see how the football food chain works, and that's what it sort of looks like to me has been happening with these 2 transfers in particular.
Yeah, I would agree with what you're saying there. I do think, I don't condone what Wissa's doing either. I think it's disgusting, really, to treat a club that has put faith in you and, giving you that back and to not back, show that, return that faith in the club and show that respect and that professionalism that you kind of expect from players. It is a big, middle finger to your club. It's a total lack of respect for everything that those clubs have put into you, really. So yeah, I don't condone it. Would I have Wissa at the club? Absolutely. He's a goal scorer, So I suppose it's a bit hypocritical in that respect, but we are looking at a situation where we've got a very unhappy striker who's likely not going to play, and we don't really have a great deal of options. We have Anthony Gordon playing through the middle at the minute, and we've got Asula, and for whatever reason, Howe doesn't have complete faith in Asula at the minute. For all there's like the makings of a decent striker there, but I just don't think he's quite ready. So yes, I would like to see Wissa come through the door. Tottenham's joined the race for that now, so that adds another interesting dynamic. Will it happen like what happened with the Trafford deal to City? Who knows? We'll have to wait and see.
So Niall, let's talk about Eze now. He's potentially, it looks like he's leaving Crystal Palace for us. I'll say potentially, but it looks like that's all just about agreed. Big blow for Palace.
Massive, absolutely massive. But what I will say is that Eze has shown how you go about things the right way. Everybody knows that he wanted to leave. It's been pretty obvious that he's given Crystal Palace everything in the 3.5 seasons he's been there, and he wants to move on. He's still trained. He's still acted completely professional. Got a perfectly good goal, which you two touched on the podcast yesterday. Disallowed. I know, the rules, whatever, but it was a fantastic free kick, either way you look at it. And the way that he's just handled himself has been excellent, and he's probably made Isak and Wissa look a little bit silly tonight when his move is going to go through to Arsenal by the looks of it, and he's going to get that move, and people will look at him as the epitome of professionalism, which is not what they're going to do with Alexander Isak or Yoane Wissa. So yeah, brilliant move for him. We all know he's a fantastic player. He's an England international. He's got bagfuls of ability. He's great with both feet. He can strike the ball. He's just an excellent footballer. And I think you've seen with Crystal Palace, you've seen the same with Michael Elise. He went obviously the season earlier. He's been excellent at Bayern Munich. I don't see why Eberechi Eze won't go the same way. I think he's got everything you need to be a fantastic player. It's going to be interesting to see him at Arsenal. I know Kai Havertz is obviously injured, so I think that's why they're really pushing for him now. But I think I'm looking forward to seeing how that pans out, because he's an excellent footballer. He's obviously got a very good head on him. He's gone all the way up the leagues. He had trials everywhere as a kid and got let go. Sunderland being one of the clubs that decided against having Eberechi Eze, which is incredible, really. Eventually, Wickham took the punt on him. He went to QPR and he's just worked his way up. So fair play to him. He's the perfect example of what you want from a footballer. So I'm chuffed to bits for him.
Okay, let's do the predictions. That's the main event, why most people are here today. So we'll start West Ham, Chelsea. Now, this is an interesting game because obviously me and Niall saw West Ham last weekend. They played against Sunderland, lost 3-0. They were very, very poor. I was talking to some West Ham fans on my metro trip home, and they were not pleased. They're not happy with the tactical setup. They're not necessarily happy with Graham Potter. don't think they're happy with the club and the fact that they're in desperate need of a central midfielder. They're in desperate need of a centre forward. I don't think the defence look great, and I really don't enjoy seeing that three at the back. I think there are big problems at West Ham right now, if I'm being brutally honest. I think that they're in trouble. They are bang in trouble. And watching the opening weekend of the Premier League, seeing obviously Sunderland win and seeing Leeds win, it makes us think that this presumption that these newly promoted three are just going to go straight back down isn't a foregone conclusion. And I'm not saying that Sunderland and Leeds are going to finish in mid-table. They're obviously going to be in and around it, but they look more competitive already than the teams we've had the last couple of years. In West Ham, I think are one of them teams that's going to have to look over their shoulder. And Chelsea this weekend, Chelsea not the best on the opening day, 0-0 with Crystal Palace, but I did think Crystal Palace played really well. But I think Chelsea will win this game quite comfortably. I've got it down as a 2-0 Chelsea win. I just think West Ham right now just aren't in a happy place. I think a couple of signings might change all that. Maybe if they brought in a central midfield and a striker before deadline day, it could change the feeling there. But I'm not at all pleased with where West Ham are at the minute. Niall, how are you feeling? Are you feeling like me for this one, or have you got a bit more optimism for West Ham?
I feel a lot like you in a lot of ways. I think from what I've seen from West Ham on Saturday was, especially first half, I've seen a Premier League team. They were big, they were strong, and they were reasonably organised in that first half. And, you know, I thought Sunderland really struggled to kind of make things work. Sunderland did look dangerous on the counter-attack, but I thought West Ham defended well at times. And the issue with that is, I mean, it's one or two things, isn't it? It's either Graham Potter isn't, you know, he's got the foundations right, but he's not got the execution right. Or it's that the team's actually not that good, and Graham Potter is getting the very best out of them to get them to the point where they do look fairly organised. So it's one of them. Unfortunately for me, I feel like it's more the first one. I don't think Graham Potter's the man for West Ham United. I think there's already a lot of bad feels around him from the support. As you said, we were talking to people after the game, and I think the main thing that was said was if they go 1-0 down quite early against Chelsea, with it being a rivalry as well, it couldn't really turn in that stadium. So, yeah, I think that it is. I think it's turnaroundable, if that's a word, for West Ham. I do believe that they can, you know, if they were to make a change and bring another manager in, an established manager who can organise these players, because they are very good players. They've got top players at West Ham. If they can organise them, I don't think that they'll struggle. That's just based off what I've seen on Saturday. Of course, it's a long season. So, yeah, I've gone for 2-0 to Chelsea, same as you, because I just think Chelsea will have too much for them going forward. You know, Sunderland picked them apart, and Chelsea have got way much more than what Sunderland have going forward. So that's my look on it. So I think it'll be 2-0, and it could be quite an uncomfortable start of the season for West Ham.
Tony, are you going for the clean sweep of Chelsea wins?
Yeah, I have to agree with you, boys. I've just got a bit of a stat there that Chelsea haven't won. Chelsea won the last 5 of the last 7 Premier League meetings with West Ham, so I can't see that changing really. Based on what I saw that last weekend there, so yeah,
fair enough. Yeah, West Ham's defense.
I've gone 3-0.
Oh, so you went a bit worse. West Ham's defence cost £115 million, by the way, last weekend. That's a bit of a mind-boggling stat as well. Man City against Tottenham. Both teams won on the opening day. Anth, what are your thoughts for this one?
I've gone 3-1 to City. City looks strong, but I don't see Spurs getting a look in.
Yeah, I don't want to spend too much time talking about Big Six. Niall, round it off. How are you feeling for this one?
I've gone for, well, I've just got a problem with Tottenham at the minute. I don't know what it is. I feel like people are hyped up about them for no reason, in my opinion. But I've got Man City beating 3-1 comfortably.
Yeah, I have 3-1 Man City as well. So there we are. Me and you are the same so far, Niall. Bournemouth against Wolves. So Bournemouth lose 4-2 on the opening day. Wolves lose 4-0. Niall, what's your thought process heading into this game? How do you see it going?
So, again, it's a strange one. I've gone for a 2-1 Bournemouth win, and the reason I've done it is because I just feel like the two teams that have suffered in the transfer window in terms of they've lost key players. The one difference from me, Bournemouth have kept their star man, and Wolves didn't. Which is, I mean, we all watched that game on Friday night against Liverpool. Bournemouth, yeah, they conceded 4 goals and they were all 4 big defensive errors. But they still had that little bit extra going forward. And when you've got a player like Antoine Semenyo, he can turn a game on its head, especially at home. They've got that lovely, tight, compact stadium. The fans are on top of it. I just back them to edge it. I don't think it'll be one-sided because I think Wolves are well set up. And, yeah, I mean, we all know what happened to them last week. But as Ant said, it's Man City. So you can't really take too much into account in that game. But I still think Bournemouth have got a little bit more than Wolves. I just think going forward they just look so much stronger. My only worry with Bournemouth is that, like I said, defensively they look weak against Liverpool. But when you're defending against Strand Larsen, it's not like defending against Eberechi and Mo Salah and Gakpo. It's a little bit different. So yeah, I've gone 2-1 to Bournemouth.
Yeah, I've went 2-0 Bournemouth, largely for the things that you said. Tony, how do you see this one going? Are you going with a Bournemouth win as well?
Yeah, I've gone 2-1 for Bournemouth, and the reason being much like what Niall said. I do think that defensive back line at Bournemouth has had a big shake-up, but I do see Wolves struggling in this one. I do like Strand Larsen, but he presents a different problem, like what Niall was saying. You know, he's a big lad. He's more sort of target man-esque. He is relatively quick, but he's not to the state of what Eberechi and the like are. So I do think that'll prove problematic. Wolves do have a relatively good record against Bournemouth, but I don't see that Bournemouth don't really lose that opening game. In the last 5 seasons, they've not lost their first home game of the season, so I don't see that changing.
Fair play. Okay, big one at the presumed bottom of the table. Burnley against Sunderland. I realise that I've got a Sunderland slideshow going on the back there. That's meant to be all the teams in the beyond the big 6, but I've pressed the wrong one. So there we go. My cards are marked. I am clearly a Sunderland fan. This is an interesting game, though. I think Burnley weren't that bad against Spurs last weekend. Obviously, they lost the game 3-0, but they had like a few chances. I don't think that the finished article yet, and I think that they probably still need to do a little bit of business. Sunderland, I thought, were really good on the opening day, and I can see how this game plays into their hands a little bit. I'm curious as to how Burnley will set up. They're obviously known as being quite a defensive team. Sunderland are pretty defensive, particularly on the road. Feels like two teams that won't want the ball. And I know it sounds ridiculous, but both teams generally are better without the ball. So I can see this one being really cagey. I was half tempted to go 0-0, but I just think Sunderland, with the confidence from the opening day of the season and what I saw from the forward players last weekend, I just think Sunderland might nick it 1-0. So I've went Sunderland to win 1-0. Niall, are you feeling as optimistic as me for Sunderland, or do you see this maybe ending in a stalemate?
I actually think the latter. I've gone for a 1-1 draw, and the reason being, I feel like this is such a huge game, even though it's only the second game of the season. Burnley, after losing to Tottenham, they didn't play too bad against Tottenham. They were fairly unlucky. I feel like, as Connor touched on yesterday's podcast, the game was lost in both boxes. I felt the middle of the park was fairly even. I just think this one is going to be, they're going to need the result. They are going to earmark Sunderland at home, just like every other team in the Premier League will, to be honest. But Burnley especially will earmark that as an absolute must. That might not play in their hands in a sense, because as you said, they might not want the ball, but they might not have a choice because they're in front of their home crowd. They're going to need to put a performance in. They're going to see the game as winnable. I just think both teams might cancel each other out. I think a point would be a much better result for Sunderland away at Burnley than what it would for Burnley, but I don't see it being. I don't think Sunderland will run away with it, despite how good Sunderland looked at the weekend. I think it's a completely different game against a team who's basically going to be treating this like a cup final in terms of they need to get their first win, and Sunderland at home is the best opportunity that they're going to get. So that's why I've gone for a draw. I think there'll be a stalemate, but I do think there'll be a good game. I just don't see it being. I don't see either side being able to really take it by the scruff of the neck due to the circumstances.
So what's your score?
I thought I said 1-1. I would say that.
Oh, okay, fair enough. That's maybe my bad. Tony, what do you think? Do you see Burnley maybe getting their first points of the season?
So I've gone with a 2-2 draw, largely for you've both said. Really, I do think of the two, Sunderland are possibly more likely to edge the result, but you cannot knock Burnley at home. They've got a solid defensive record, so it's one of those. I do think it'll be a tight game. It's one of those daft relegation 6-pointers sort of esque. For all it's only the second game of the season, it is a big game for both sides. If you can strike that killer blow early, it can add up at the end of the season. So yeah, definitely a tricky game to predict, but I've gone for a draw.
Okay, we'll move on to Brentford against Aston Villa. Brentford opened with a 3-1 defeat against Nottingham Forest, a bit underwhelming, and I think it's fair to say Aston Villa pretty underwhelming in their opening day, although a 0-0 draw against Newcastle isn't a bad result, especially when you're down to 10 men for a chunk of it. I just think Aston Villa didn't show their best selves, it's fair to say, last weekend. But Tony, talk us through this one. You obviously watched Aston Villa against Newcastle last weekend, so I'm sure you have many thoughts on Villa. How do you see this one playing out?
Yeah, Villa did very well considering they went down to 10 men. They did perform really well in the second half, even after going down to 10 men. The structure of the side is really strong. They've got a lot of depth, and I think it'll be too much for Brentford to handle. For all, Brentford's got quite a good record in the opening game of the season. Villa have won the last two away fixtures at Brentford. The other thing about Brentford is they score a lot of goals and they concede a lot of goals at home, so it could be a game full of goals. I do expect it to have a few goals, but unfortunately in the Brentford net. So I've gone for Villa to win 3-0.
Heavy result. Well, I've went for Villa to win 2-0, so similar sort of feeling to you. Niall, are you as hot on Villa in this one, or maybe as down on Brentford? I feel like my result is because I'm down on Brentford more so than I'm hot on Aston Villa.
Totally agree with you there, Connor. It's more. I mean, my thing with Aston Villa is I've always been a big fan of their squad depth. I don't think they've got the greatest squad like players in the world, but they've got depth in every position, which has always been why I think they thrive. Strange one against Newcastle because they only actually made one substitute. I know they were down to 10 men, which obviously would have had a big impact, but they only made one substitute, and I think it was late on, and it was their captain who they brought off. So, when it comes to depth, I kind of hope that hasn't gone out the window because that's what I liked about them. But yeah, I've gone for a 2-0 win for that just because I just think they've got too much more because Brentford. I'm just not impressed by that team. I don't like that squad. It's not as good as what it was last season. They've lost too many key players and they've not replaced them, and that's why.
Arsenal against Leeds next, and if Leeds, I suppose, had a kind-ish, you'd say, start of the season, Everton at home, they're certainly going to potentially be brought back down to earth against Arsenal. I was actually quite impressed with the Leeds in the way they looked like a Premier League team, like they looked well drilled. I thought that the midfield in particular looked strong. I thought Anton Stack in particular looked very good. I worry about the forward line. I don't know if Willie Gnonto, Dan James, and Joe Peru are the answer for a Premier League team, to be honest. Certainly a Premier League team that's trying to, stay up comfortably in the Premier League. I do worry about that, and I think they need to add players to that front three. And I think that the front three will really struggle at the Emirates. I just think it's going to be really hard for them to conjure up chances. Now, what I would say is that Leeds are very good in transition. They are quite a good counter-attacking team. You would expect that Arsenal will send bodies forward and will dominate that game. We'll probably have 65% possession, and that could play into Leeds' hands. But I just think Arsenal at home in the opening day, their first home game of the season, are going to be a little bit too strong. I've went Arsenal to win 3-0. And are you as sort of strong on Arsenal in this one, or do you think Leeds have got a chance to maybe shock?
I've gone 2-1. I do think I agree with a lot what you said about Leeds. I don't think the squad's as bad as what a lot of people were thinking coming into the season, especially with a few additions that they've made. Like Stack in the middle, he looks very solid. But Arsenal's just got so much more in all positions, really, and they're looking to add Eze to the mix as well. So that provides another headache for any manager going into that fixture. So yeah, I feel like Arsenal will just have too much. But I do think that Leeds can nick a goal. So yeah, 2-1 for me.
Niall, how do you feel about this one? Do you think Leeds have got a chance, or do you think Arsenal should win it pretty comfortably?
Yeah, I've gone 3-0 Arsenal. I don't think Leeds, on Monday, they only started 3 new players. It was 3 debuts. That's the rest of it. It's a championship team, a very good championship team, but that's okay against Everton at home. It's not okay against Arsenal away. Don't think they'll have enough. I know that they might make, Calvert-Lewin might be involved, and Gulev, who was suspended, he might be involved. So it could be a little bit different. But I just felt like that team just hadn't changed enough from last season to warrant going to get anything from the Emirates, just based off what I've seen on Monday. So I've gone 3-0 Arsenal.
I think it was Jack Abiol, the centre-back, who was suspended, wasn't it? I'm pretty sure, yeah. I just wanted to clarify that before a Leeds fan comes in and tells you off now. Let's move on, though. Crystal Palace against Nottingham Forest. We obviously talked about Eze at the top of the show, so I doubt he'll be playing in this one. Niall, what's your sort of feeling in this one? I think Palace have looked pretty good, opening 2 games for the Community Shield, and Forest obviously looked very good last weekend, winning 3-1.
Yeah, again, I couldn't really decide a winner in it. Both sides impressed us. Again, have Forest got the problem that maybe Sunderland have got this week of thinking, are we really good? Or was just the opposition not very good? So it could be a case of that. But I've gone for a 2-2 draw because I couldn't really decide between them. I think both sides looked fairly impressive. Both sides are very good going forward. As you said, it's going to be difficult without Eze, who looks like he might not be there, or it could be his last game because these deals do take a while. But we'll see what happens. But yeah, I've gone 2-2.
Well, I've also went 2-2, which I feel like me and you have had a lot of similar results now. Tony, how do you see this one going? Can you see a winner?
I've gone with a stalemate as well. I've gone 1-1. I couldn't pick a winner between the two of them. If I was going to if you're going to put a gun to my head and forces it, I would probably go Forest. But yeah, I don't see one being stronger than the other. Like, especially if Eze is still there, they've got some talented players all over. I mean, Niall's just flashed something at the screen. I don't know what it was. I couldn't see what it was.
Sorry, it was the Fabrizio Romano's just tweeted the "Here we go" for Eberechi Eze.
Right, yeah.
That's what it was. But
Okay.
yeah, it wasn't very clear. But yeah, so maybe he won't be playing.
Okay, so that confirms. If I was going to go anywhere, I would probably go Forest. So yeah, but I've gone for a stalemate on this one.
Cool. Okay, Everton, Brighton. And how do you see this one playing out? Everton obviously lose on the opening day. Brighton pegged back very, 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 very late against Fulham and drew 1-1 on the opening day.
So Brighton's unbeaten in the last 4 games against Everton. So they come into this with a strong record. I do think that Brighton, after that heartbreak there the other week, I think they'll probably be licking their wounds a little bit. So I've gone for Everton to win 2-1 at the new home. So we'll see what their new home brings them. Hopefully, it brings them a bit of good luck, and they can bounce back from that disappointment at Leeds.
Yeah, I mean, I actually did a video on the channel about the fact that actually new homes are generally a negative for teams. Normally, that the home record gets worse. So that'll be interesting to see whether or not that happens. I've went with a 1-1 draw, so an underwhelming start at the Hill Dickinson Stadium, possibly the worst named stadium in the Premier League at the moment. Niall, do you see Everton starting life in their new home with 3 points?
Yeah, I've gone the same as Antha. I've said 2-1, and literally no football and logic in it other than they're playing their first game in the new stadium. It's just, they can't lose their first game in their new stadium, man, surely. But that's literally the only reason I've backed them to win. I think Brighton have probably got a better team than them, but yeah, first game, new stadium. As Ant said, Brighton might struggle this week conceding that last minute goal. So yeah, Everton 2-1.
Fulham against Manchester United next. And this is an interesting one for me because I thought Man United were decent on the opening day. And I think Fulham are a really, really strong team. I really, really like Marco Silva. And my deciding factor on this game is just the fact that I really don't trust Manchester United. And I think they did play well against Arsenal. They were good. They looked far better than what I've seen them look for a long time. But I just think Fulham are a very, very decent team in the Premier League. They're possibly a top 10 team. I know they've not done much in terms of the summer market, but I just think it's a hard place to go. And it's a place where I just see Man United struggling. I've went with Fulham to win 2-0. I'm pretty high on Marco Silva and I'm pretty high on that Fulham team. And I just think they'll have too much for Man United, who I still don't trust to be not chaotic as I have been. Anth, are you on my team on this one, or do you think that Man United will beat Fulham?
I've gone for another boring draw, unfortunately. I've gone 1-1. Much like you, I'm not really seeing the hype around Amorim at the minute. Marco Silva does a very solid job at Fulham, and he has done for the past few years now. So, yeah, I see it as a draw.
Niall, what about you? You're always high on Man United. I bet you have Man United to win.
I've got Man United to win 2-0. But the reason why I've got Man United to win 2-0 is I did watch the game against Arsenal on Sunday, and the amount of times Mbeumo got behind their back line and Cunha, but more so Mbeumo, was ridiculous. Now, if they're getting behind Arsenal's back line, they're going to be able to break Fulham's down. Now, don't get us wrong, Fulham are a very aging team. They're very experienced in the Premier League. Anderson and Quentin, I think, were the 2 starting centre-halves on Saturday when they played Brighton. They've got lots of experience, but I just still think Mbeumo and Cunha, that they were just too good going forward, and I feel like they're going to do that again. If Sesko starts, could be a different story as well, because he didn't really have a chance to show anything, did he, on Sunday? But yeah, I think Man United will just have far too much for them going forward. So I've gone for a Man United 2-0 win.
It's a turn up for the books. 15th or 16th in the Premier League last season, going away to Fulham and winning. We'll finish off Newcastle against Liverpool, which is a fascinating encounter for Monday Night Football. One I am very much looking forward to. And talk us through this one and all the many layers and storylines, and try to only say Alexander Isak's name once.
It's the Isak derby, isn't it? That's what it is. So yeah, I'm expecting a tense atmosphere. I'm expecting the stadium to be absolutely bouncing. Going there on Monday night is going to be a treat. It really is, especially with it being bank holiday. There's going to be a few alcoholic beverages consumed prior to the game by many of the fans. So, and there's going to be that venom, going into every tackle. I think Joe Linton's going to be on the warpath. I'd be lucky if he makes it past 5 minutes without a yellow card. So, it'll be a big game. And I've actually gone for Newcastle to win, which doesn't happen very often. I don't know where the goals are coming from, mind, because we haven't really got a figurehead up top there. But I fancy it to win.
I always find St. James's Park like a ground where like weird and wonderful things happen. And I would say that I can't see a way that Newcastle, to be honest, like even though the Liverpool defense weren't great last weekend, I just think Liverpool have too much. So I've went Liverpool to win 1-0, and I get that the atmosphere and stuff at Newcastle is going to be very good. I just think Liverpool won't be phased by that. They're probably, we talked about atmosphere like last week, didn't we, about how I don't necessarily buy it with being important. But I don't think Liverpool will care about the Newcastle atmosphere, and I don't think they'll care about how vicious it is. I just think Liverpool are a better place than Newcastle right now. I think they'll win 1-0. Niall, how do you see this one playing out? Do you think it's going to be fireworks?
Yeah, I think it's going to be mental. I've gone for a 3-3 draw, the same as when they met at St James's last season. I know it's a ridiculous thing to say because Newcastle probably going to look like starting Anthony Gordon up front, who hasn't scored in 19 games for Newcastle. So it's not great, but I just think that game, everything's going to go out the window. I think the crowd, as Ant said, is going to be on top of it. It's going to be wacky, crazy, mental. Alexander Isak's going to jump out in a helicopter wearing a Liverpool kit at half time, and the whole crowd's going to go mental and start throwing things at him. And I just think it's going to be insane. I'm really looking forward to it. I said to Ant the other week, I texted him saying, I'm actually jealous that you're going to be involved in a game like that, because I just think it's one of those games where the atmosphere, everybody's going to be watching that game. The atmosphere will be unbelievable. We know what St James's Park's like. I know you don't believe in atmosphere, Connor, but we know what it's going to be like. And I just think it's going to be a great game. I'm looking forward to it. You've got the Blythe Spartans, Ashton Derby in the daytime, then Newcastle Liverpool on the night time. Perfect day. Looking forward to
it. Very good. I'm sure our listeners across the country will be keeping a keen eye on the what levels that, like the 9th tier or something, Blythe and Ashton. 8th tier. Okay, fair enough. But thanks everyone for listening to this episode. Please like and subscribe. Please let us know in the comments as well your predictions and tell us how wrong we are. Tell us how wrong Niall is for predicting Man United to win at Fulham, which I think is possibly the worst pick of the weekend in terms of results. And we'll join us next Sunday, where we'll review all the action. I know we'll obviously miss the Monday Night Football with Newcastle, but scheduling is scheduling. Thanks, Niall. Thanks, Ant. And we'll see you all next